Hello everyone. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this cinematic, emotion-driven render with this majestic, glowing character floating up. You're going to learn a lot of cool techniques in this tutorial, starting with how to set up this scene, which includes the environment and lighting. Next, I will cover the particle system to achieve those glowing directional particles, and then I'll show you how to finalize everything in the Blender Compositor. I want to emphasize that compositing really took this render to the next level. As you can see, this was the render before compositing, and this is after. Quite a difference. Before we get started, as always, you can download this entire blend file on my Patreon, including all the camera animations and the compositing and the characters and the scene setup. So consider becoming a member and get access to my past and future tutorial project files. I also want to mention that this grass setup here was achieved using the Geo-Scatter add-on. Now, in the tutorial, you don't really need to use the Geo-Scatter add-on. I can actually show you a technique which uses a free method where you can just use a simple image texture. But if you really want to take your renders to the next level, then the Geo-Scatter add-on is an amazing add-on to buy because it's just one click, it's very simple, and you get some amazing realistic foliage and just grass in general. Alright, without further ado, let's get started with the tutorial. The idea. Let me first show you what inspired me to do this render. It was this post on TikTok. Yes, I get some of my ideas on TikTok. I broke the project down into 4 sections. First, we have the environment here, just a grass field, then the character floating up with an emission node, then the small particles being emitted from the character traveling in this one direction. Okay, we're going to start with the scene setup. I'll hit A and then X to delete everything. Shift A, add in a mesh plane. I'm going to hit N so you can see the exact scale right here. I'm going to hit S and then 10 on my keyboard, making the scale 10. And then I'll hit Control A to apply the scale. Now this is going to be our grass field. So I'll hit F2 and I'll rename it to grass field. Now, grass fields are usually not super, completely flat like this. So we're going to add some bumps to it. Let's go into edit mode and then we'll right-click, subdivide, right-click, subdivide, right-click, subdivide, right-click, subdivide, right-click, subdivide, and right-click, subdivide. Okay, I think that's good enough. And then I'm just going to move over here so I'm facing the -y direction. And then I'm just going to let's select this point right here or this vertice. And then I'm going to use the proportional editing tool and I'll hit G on my keyboard. And then I'll scroll on my mouse wheel to make this gray circle bigger to add that bump. Hit Z and we can just scale on the Z axis to add a small subtle bump. I'll add another one over here. I'll select this point and I'll hit G, Z, and we're just adding some small bumps to our grass field so it's not completely flat. You don't have to copy exactly what I'm doing here. We're just adding some bumps. So, well, you get the idea. Why am I repeating it? But yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into object mode and we're going to add a material to this grass field because right now it's just gray. So let's go to material properties. We'll hit new. We'll rename the material to grass. And then for the material, I'm just going to add an image texture. So I'm going to be using this image texture right here. It's a grass seamless texture right here. You can go on Google actually. So you can just go on Google and search for a grass texture, anyone you want, as long as they're flat like this. But if you want to use the same one that I'm using, like this one right here, I'll leave a link in the description so you can download the same one. But I'm going to go click on my mesh plane. I'm going to go to material properties. I'll go to base color. We'll just go to image texture. Open and I'll just search for the one right here. Again, link in the description, open image and nothing happened. And that's because we're not in material preview. So hit Z and we'll go to material preview. And there we go. We got our grass texture. Okay, so now all we have to do is add some grass blades. To do that, we're going to use a particle system. So let's go to the particle tab, hit the plus icon, and we'll change this to here. And now we got some grass blades. But obviously they're way too tall. So we're going to lower them by changing the hair length right here. I'm going to change it to something like 0.8 8. Again, we can always adjust it once we import in our character so we can get a better sense of the scale. But for now, this is fine. I'll go to Advanced, Physics, and I'll change the browning to 0.1. So they're not pointing completely straight up. Okay, we'll go to Velocity. I'll change this to 0.07. There we go. I think that's it. There isn't really much else I did. Oh, yeah, we're going to change the number, obviously. So I'm going to change this to 50,000. I think the end number is going to be 100,000 to fill in those gaps, but for now, 50,000 is fine for viewport performance. We can move on to importing our character. So let's go back into solid mode. And now we're going to go on Mixamo. Famous Mixamo. We love Mixamo because there are tons of free characters we can use. So let's log in. You can make a free account or use your Google account. Okay, so once you're logged in, you're going to search for a character you want to use in the animation. So I'll be using a character called Addon. So he's right here. I'll be using Addon here. And for the pose, we're going to go to animations and we're going to search for this floating pose. So it's actually some sort of, well, it's called something like female pose, I think. It should be somewhere here. Oh, right here. So female dance pose is what it's called. So this is the pose we're using. So yeah, let's go ahead and just download it. Okay, so once you have it downloaded, you can save it to a folder. Mine is in the downloads folder right here. I'm going to rename it to, let's do Addon floating pose. I'll go to File, Import, FBX. We'll go and search for Addon floating and he'll pop up right there. There he is. Let's go. Okay, so let's set up the camera as well so we know what the animation or the framing is going to look like. So let's go to Shift A and we'll do camera. We'll go to the camera view and we'll just move it back and up. On the Z-axis, I'm actually going to have it pointing a little up. Okay, I think this is fine now. So we're going to start with our character here. So right now the character is, standing on the ground. We need to fix the toes here because he's going to be floating, and right now it looks like he's, tippy-toeing on the ground. So let's go ahead and just click our grass field, hit H to hide it. Let's click on our armature. Let's go to pose mode. Okay, and we also want the armature to be in front to get a better view. So let's go to the viewport or the object properties, viewport display, and we can change it to in front. All right, now let's go to the X view right here. We can select this bone, hit R and then X on your keyboard, and then we can just adjust it. Oh, we got to make sure we delete the keyframes, otherwise it might go back. So if I move one frame ahead, yeah, it goes back. So hover over your timeline, hit A and then X to delete all the keyframes. Okay, now we can go back to frame 1 and just hit R and then X and we'll straighten the toe out. And we'll also do the same for the other side. Okay, cool. Now we can bring back the grass field. Let's go back to the camera and we're going to animate him floating up. So let's hit R and then Z on my keyboard and then we'll just rotate him like this a little bit. Okay. And then while you're on frame 1, we'll hover over the transformation settings, hit I on your keyboard to add a keyframe on the location and I on the rotation as well. And we'll go to the end frame to 50 and we'll just move him up. And we're also going to rotate him completely like this. Okay, and then we can hit I to add in that keyframe, and then I to add in that keyframe on the rotation as well. So now we have a keyframe on the end frame and the first frame. So now if we play the animation, he's floating up. Okay, we also need to add in some subtle camera animation as well. So select your camera, add a keyframe on the location by hitting I, and the rotation by hitting I while you're on frame 1, and then go to the end frame. And we'll move in the camera closer. And we'll have it move up like this. I think that looks good. And then just hit I and then I to add in those keyframes. And then if you play, boom, we got the camera panning in. Okay, now let's move on to the lighting. So if we go to the render properties right here, we're going to use the Cycles render engine. So switch it to Cycles and make sure you're using your GPU if you have one. Highly recommended for faster rendering. You want to make sure it's enabled right here. If you go to System, make sure your GPU is checked and your CPU is unchecked. save preferences, and then we can close out of that. Okay, so we're gonna make the viewport 200 samples, and we're also gonna render it at 200 samples as well. All right, now let's go into render mode, see what it's looking like. And that's what it's looking like. Very flat. So we need some lighting. Let's start with the background. So for the background, we can either use an HDRI, but I'm gonna use an image texture instead. So let's go to solid mode. Let's do Shift A, and we'll add in image mesh plane. I'm gonna go to image textures. I'm gonna search for skies, and I have this sky texture right here. I downloaded from pexels.com. Again, I'll leave a link in the description for the same sky texture that I'm using, but you can use any nighttime sky texture that you like. Okay, so I'll use this one. For the shader, I'm just gonna make sure it's emission, and then I'll hit import image as plane. Okay, now let's go to render mode. We will just bring it up. And we're actually gonna move it back. We're actually gonna move it very back, but before I do that, I'm gonna go to solid mode, and I'm just gonna duplicate my grass field. So I'm gonna hit Shift D to duplicate it, and then I'll right click on my mouse to set it back in place. So right click, it's back in place now, and then I can move it back. We don't need the particle system on this plane right here, so we can go to the particle tab and just hit minus. Okay, and then we can actually just make this a lot bigger. Maybe we can go into edit mode, and we can just click on this point right here, hit G while you're in proportional editing, and we can scroll our mouse wheel and just make it a little bigger. This one as well. Okay, let's go back to the camera, and we'll go into render. Well, we'll select our camera actually. We'll go to our output properties and check mark a render region and crop the render region. So we're only seeing what's within the box. Let's go to render mode, and then we can select our image texture at the back, and we'll just scale it up. Now it's emitting too much light. I don't need it to emit that much light because I want it to be really dark. So let's go to the material properties. Where is the emission right here? We'll just decrease the emission to something like 0.02. I want it to be very, very dark because the main light source is gonna be emitted from our character. And you're about to see that right now. So let's go and select our character right here. And we're gonna open up a new window. So let's open up a new window by going to the top right corner, click and drag like this, go to the shader editor. We're not gonna use any of these textures here. So you know what? We can actually just go ahead and delete them by hitting X to delete. We can also delete this as well. All we're gonna need is an emission node. So Shift A, search for emission, and we'll plug that in. Oh, zoom into our character. And now he's glowing. We're gonna make the strength 6. And we're gonna change the color to something like a subtle green, sorta. Again, you can choose any color you like. I'm just making it this color right here. We'll change the material and we'll call it glow. So if you want, let's zoom into our character by hitting the period key right here. And we're gonna apply this material to all of the character right here, not just the body. So select any part of the character like the beard here, and we'll change the material to glow. The face as well, change it to glow. Eyebrows too, it's gonna be glow. The hair is glow. Okay, now the entire body is glowing. And now let's go back to camera view to see what it's looking like. And we can just turn off overlays and boom, that's what it's looking like. Okay, we can go back into solid mode. And now we're gonna move on to adding some glowing particles that are gonna be emitted from the character and moving in this one direction right here. Okay, so to add some particles, we're gonna select the body of our character right here, and then we're gonna go to the particle tab and just click on the plus icon to add a particle system. So if we go back to frame 1 and then just hit play, we can see that there are particles, but they're falling to the ground. We don't want that. We want them to be floating. So let's go all the way down, and we're just going to turn off gravity. Okay, now if you hit play, they're gonna be floating. Let's go. But they're dying out too fast. Okay, so let's change the lifetime to 500, and we'll also change the end to 500 as well. All right, now if you hit play, they will be lasting a lot longer or throughout the entire animation. Okay, so I'm actually gonna extend this entire animation to 360 frames. I'm going to then go and change the particle settings now. So let's go down, and we're going to change the drag to 0.469. And we also want to change the particle shape here. So let's do Shift A. We'll add in a icosphere. There we go. And we want it to move it away from the scene where it's not visible in the camera. I'll also move it down here. And then we're going to go and select our particles. Let's go down to render, and we'll change this to object, and we'll use the eyedropper tool, and we'll just select the icosphere that we just created. So use the eyedropper tool, boom, and now our particles look like the icosphere. We want to make the scale to be 0.012. Now they're super small, and we also want to change the scale randomness to 1. Okay, and now we have particles flying all over the place. But we want the particles to be traveling in this one direction here. So to do that, we're actually going to be using force fields. Force fields are what allow us to change the direction that the particles travel in, and they also allow us to change the shape of the direction as well. So let's do Shift A, and we'll add in a force field. The force field we're going to be using is a wind force field. So now we have wind right here. We're just going to go ahead and click on the ground, and we'll just hide it for now. And we'll select our wind force field, and I'm just going to hit R and then Y on my keyboard, and I'll just rotate it and make them travel in the direction I want them to travel in. So I'm going to point it this way, and now if you hit play, they should travel in that direction. And they are. Nice. Okay, I'm going to change the power of our wind right here, and I'll change the strength down to, let's do 0.5. As you can see, the animation ends. As you can see, the floating animation ends at frame 250. We actually extended the animation, so let's go ahead and just click on this keyframe right here, and we'll hit G, and we'll drag it all the way towards the end. We'll also do the same with the camera. So select the camera, select this keyframe right here, and we'll drag it all the way to the end. Okay. I'm going to add in one more force field. Let's do Shift A, and we'll add in a vortex. Again, we'll just do R and then Y, and we'll point it in the same direction. And let's do play. Let's see what that does to the particles. And you can see it changes the shape of the particles' directions. And now it's a bit more narrow. That's a little bit too strong. So I'm going to change the strength of the force field right here, or the vortex, to 0.1. Let's hit play. By the way, if it's playing slow, you can actually go to this option right here, turn on this computer or monitor screen right here, and then go to your grass field and just hide it completely. And then it'll play a lot faster. Okay, now I don't like how the particles are being emitted from the back side of the body as well. I only want the particles to be emitted from the front part of the body. If you don't mind, you can skip this step, but I kind of want to change this up a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the data properties right here. I'm going to hit the plus icon right here. I'll change this to particle density, renaming it. And then I'm going to go into the weight paint mode, and let's go back to frame 1, and I'll just paint over the parts where I want the particles to be emitted from. So the red is going to show us where the particles are going to spawn. And so I'll just paint the front part of the body here. Okay, so now the particles are only going to be emitted from the red part. Let's go back into object mode. Let's go to the particle settings, and we're going to go all the way down, and we're going to go to this. We're going to go to vertex groups right here, and where the density is, we're going to search for the particle vertex group that we just created. So particle density, boom, and now if we hit play, they only emit from the front part of our body right here, which is what I want. If you want the particles to travel faster, you can actually go and change the wind settings right here, and you can actually go to the power, and we can change the strength to 1. And then we can go ahead and see that it's traveling, or the particles are traveling a lot faster. And that's if you want to increase the speed. I'll do like 0.7. Okay, so once you're happy with how the particles are looking, we need to bake them so they stay the same. You can go ahead and just go to the particle settings, and you can go to the cache right here, and you can just bake all dynamics. Okay, cool. And now we can bring back our grass field. And as you can see, the grass field is also going to be affected by our forces right here, our wind force and vortex. We don't want that, so let's select our grass field. Let's go to the particle systems. Let's go all the way down, and we will just make the all 0 so they're not affected by the force fields. And there you go. Let's go in render mode. Let's see what it's looking like. Oh, but one thing to note is there's no material on our particles. They're not glowing, so we want to add a material to it. So let's go, and let's go back to solid mode. Let's select our icosphere. Let's go to the shader tab right here, and we'll just use the glow material. Okay, now if we go back to camera view, let's go into render mode. Render mode. Boom. We got glowing particles. Let's go. All right, now the second part we need to do is add some more particles that will cover, the entire frame right here. So to do that, we're gonna go back to frame 1. We're gonna add another particle emitter by hitting Shift A. We'll do mesh, we'll do another icosphere, and this one is gonna be very small. So let's just hit S, make it very small, and we'll call it particle emitter. We'll hit the plus icon. And we're gonna change this. We'll make the end again 500. We'll make the lifetime 500 as well. And we're gonna go down. We'll do the object is gonna be the icosphere again. So we'll just choose the icosphere. And it's not gonna be affected by the forces. So let's just make the gravity 0 and we'll make all 0 as well. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, they're way too big. So let's just make the scale 0.01. Scale randomness. There we go. We're gonna we'll make the frame start like minus 400 because we want a bunch of these particles already in the frame. And they are already in the frame. So if we go to render mode, you see that they're already there. They're traveling a bit too fast, so you know what? Let's go ahead and decrease the velocity to something like 0.3. Now, if we go back to solid mode, I can't really see them properly. Let me just increase the size for a second. And you know what? Let's hide our grass field. So you know what? We're going to actually add in another force. Let's do Shift A. We'll add in a force field turbulence. We'll select this and we'll just go down, and we're actually going to turn back all on, but we'll turn off vortex, force, and wind. So it's only affected by the turbulence. Yes, there we go. But the turbulence again is too strong, so let's go to turbulence. Let's go and change the strength to 0.2. Okay, so I decided to make the particle emitter velocity, I pointed at 0.3, and for the turbulence, I made the strength at 0.1. Okay, and then if we go and select this, we'll just go back to the particle settings and we'll change the scale back down to 0.1. Okay, we also want this to follow our character. So with the particle emitter selected, which is this thing right here, we're going to hold Shift and select the armature. Control P, parent it to the object, so now it'll just follow our character. Okay, and what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna bake this particle simulation as well. So let's go to we'll select the particles again. We'll select the particle emitter specifically, if we can find it. It's gonna be under the armature now, so right here. And then we'll just bake all dynamics. All right, cool. Now we can bring back our grass field. And that's what it's looking like. All right, cool. Now we can move on to the compositing. All right, so let's go to the compositing tab. Now, what I would usually do is I would render out the animation from Blender and do all my compositing in an editing software called DaVinci Resolve. But I decided to try out the Blender Compositor here, and I gotta say, it is a very powerful tool. And honestly, it gave me even better results than what I would have gotten in DaVinci Resolve. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on Use Nodes. And then we have the Render Layers node right here, and then our Composite node right here. So in between these two nodes, we're gonna be placing all our effects in between these two nodes here. And so to see the image or to preview the image, we need to go ahead and just go to a random frame, and we'll just click on Render Image. Okay, And we still can't see the image, and that's because we need to add in a viewer node. So if you hit Shift A on your keyboard, like you would do to add in an object, so Shift A, search for a viewer node, like this. And now we need to plug it in to this viewer node. Now the issue is we still need the render layers node to be plugged into the composite node as well, because the viewer node is just there to help us preview what's going on as we add in our effects. So to plug it in at the same time, I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard and then right click and drag like this, which will add in a point. Now with this point, we can just click and drag and we can plug our render layers node into the composite. And now it's plugged into both at the same time. If you want to zoom out of the preview image in the back, you can just hit V on your keyboard to zoom out. So V, V. Okay, and now we can start adding in our effects. So I'm going to hit G and just move this over here. And we can start adding in our effects right now. So the first effect I'm going to add in is a glare node. So Shift A will search for a glare node. And if you plug it right here, you can see what it does, but this is not the effect I want. So you can change the glare type right here. I'm going to change it to bloom. And look at that, that's way too bright. So we're gonna increase the threshold, which will decrease the brightness. We're also gonna decrease the size. So I'll make it like 6. I think maybe like 5.5 is good. Maybe 5.6. Yeah, I like that. 5.6 is nice. Okay, and we're also gonna change the quality here to high quality. Now I'm gonna add in another glare node. Instead of searching for it like this, we can just click on this, hit Shift D on your keyboard and duplicate it, and boom, we have another glare node. And for this, I'm going to change the glare type to ghost. And as you can see, if I hit V to zoom out a little bit, you can see that it adds this sort of a lens flare effect. Now, again, it's a little too strong, so I'm going to just, increase the threshold to something like 6.5, 6.8. Okay, yeah, and you don't have to mess with any of these settings right here, like the mix. The mix, all it does, it just isolates the effect. So if you move it to 1, it just isolates the effect. So we don't really need to mess with that right now. This here just messes with the color, I guess, if you really want to play with that. I'm just going to leave it at 0.250, which was the default. Okay, now I'm going to add in another glare effect. So I'll do Shift D, duplicate again, and I'm going to change this glare type to streaks. It's hard to see what's going on. We can just increase the effect by decreasing the threshold here. So boom. And you can see it adds this little streak effect, which makes the particles look like mini stars, I guess. That's a little too strong. So I'm going to maybe make it like 5. 6 is good. I think the ghost effect is a little too strong still, so let me just decrease it. Okay, looking good. I'm going to add in another effect now. So let's do Shift A. We'll add in a lens distortion effect. Boom. You can't really see what's going on, and that's because we need to increase this. So what this does is it just messes with the lens distortion. You can make it look like some sort of fisheye lens like this, but I'm not really going to mess with this one. Let's put it back to 0. I'm actually going to mess with this second one here, the dispersion. So the dispersion, all it does is you can see what happens to the edges here. Boom. It adds this little RGB effect to the edges, but that's again too strong. So I'm going to make it very subtle, 0.05. And you can see on the edges here, it adds that nice little, distortion effect, which is what I like. Now, if you hit M, you can mute it. And you can see the before, and then if I hit M again, the after. Boom. I'm actually going to increase the saturation as well. So let's do Shift A, and we'll add in a hue and saturation value right here. Plug it, and we'll just increase the saturation a little bit. Maybe a little more. Okay, cool. That's pretty much it. And now, before we move on to the render, to our scene. So let's go back to layout. Let's turn on overlays. And if you go into render mode, you can see what it's looking like. You can actually see the compositing effects live in the viewport as well if you just go over here and just turn on always. And now you can see the compositing effects right inside of your viewport, which is nice. Very cool. Okay, one final thing I'm going to do is you can see some sort of little gaps in the grass field, and that's because for the grass right here, I didn't add enough particles. So we're going to increase the number to 100,000. And boom, now those gaps will be filled. And you can see the gaps are now filled. And look at that. It's just looking very beautiful. Like, look at that final rendered image right there. Absolutely amazing. Okay, so for the final render, I actually did not end up using this grass field here. I actually used an add-on called the Geo-Scatter add-on right here, which allowed me to add in a variety of different foliage, which is a little more realistic and is, one click. So I'll show you how to use that right here. But again, it's just optional. You don't have to, but I just think it does a better job. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on, I'm going to save my work first. And then I'm going to go ahead and hide this. And I'm going to go to the Geo-Scatter add-on. I'm just going to use this plane as the emitter. And now I can go to Edits, Preferences, and I can go to the add-ons. I can go to the Geo-Scatter add-on, and I can just go to the manager right here. And then I can go to my biomes, and I can choose different biomes that I want my grass field to be like. So I'm going to go ahead and choose grass 7. And as you can see, it adds in the grass for me. And you know what? I can make the grass a lot bigger by going over to, so I can go to the scale boost right here, and I could just increase the size of all of them. It just looks a bit more beautiful, a little more realistic, and yeah. And what I can do here is I can actually, it doesn't have to be spread out on this entire field right here. We can actually make a vertex group for our grass field as well. So I'm going to go to the vertex or the data properties right here. I'll create a new vertex group. I'll call this grass density. And then, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go, let me just hide this for a second. I'm going to go into the weight paint mode. I'm going to go to the top view, and I'm just going to paint in the area where I want the grass to show up. So let me just increase the radius, and let's go to the camera view actually. And I'm just going to paint over the area where I want the grass to show up. So it's going to show up like generally in this area. All right, now this is where the grass is going to show up. If I go back to object mode, I can bring back my grass, and I can go to vertex groups, check mark it, and I'll just click on grass density. And we'll just reverse it, and boom. Now the grass shows up a little more here instead of all over the place, which is what I want. Now, that's pretty much it. Now, for the final render, I also added several different other camera angles to get different shots, but I'm not going to cover that in this tutorial. You can obviously get that in my full blend file, which is available on Patreon if you want, but let's move on to the rendering process. Okay, so let's go and find a place to save our animation. I'm going to let's go to my clips folder, and we'll make a new folder. We'll call it Floating on Grass Tutorial, and we'll just double click. We'll make a new folder here as well. We'll call it Image Sequence. Enter, double click, and then this is where the image sequence is going to be saved, except it's going to be a PNG image sequence, and that's it. So now we can go to the render properties here. We're going to add some motion blur, and we're also going to uncheck the noise because I didn't really use it. We're actually going to go to advanced. We're going to click on this seed option here and click on this clock option. This will just add some noise patterns to our final animation, which mimics that sort of film grain look. And it'll also just speed up your render time as well. For the max samples, we'll keep it at 200. And I'm going to go to color management, and I'm just going to change this to standard. So if you go to the rendered mode right here, you can go see color management, and I just like how standard looks. It's a lot, oh my God, it just makes it a lot more brighter. And yeah, maybe we'll decrease the exposure a bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, maybe decrease the gamma as well. Just a slight bit. Or if you want, you can just keep it at AGX. Entirely up to you, but I like standard a little better. Okay, cool. And that is it. I think we are ready. Let's go ahead and render this bad boy out. Render animation. All right, that's it for this video. As always, you can download this entire blend file on my Patreon and get access to a ton of other cool perks. If you found this tutorial to be helpful, make sure to give this video a like and hit hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future tutorial videos like this. Until next time, it's been your boy, Only RJ. Peace.